'Cause I'm in the stars tonight. So watch me bring the fire, set the night light. Shoes on, get up in the morning, cup of milk, let's rock and roll. Kink out, kick the drum.
He
Unaware. Do you think that a lot of people who are unaware of how much character work and how well-rounded these relationships are, do you think that's why people poo-poo and minimize the importance of romance? Do you think that if they got in there and gave romance a chance, they would find plenty of romance fiction out here where the diversity of the world is distilled down into really well thought out microcosms of really well developed characters?
Yeah, I mean, I think
histories and futures.
That's an aspect of romance for sure that I think in general, not just in the genre of romance, but just as in romance in any kind of within the context of any genre, that part of what romance brings to the table, I guess, like in terms of narrative, is that it gives you a chance to see the way that people interact when they are at their most kind of intimate and most vulnerable. And so there's always going to be a lot about how, like, it basically brings up like a lot of the really core elements of people's personalities and histories in a lot of cases.
Like, that's a real strength of the genre, where readers and the author, of course, you know, get to kind of stare into and really contemplate how individuals unpack each of their own suitcases relative to suitcases that are near them, who gets which closet space.
Right. I mean, I think it's interesting to me because, like, not to name any names, but I definitely had family members, like, and they were all of the male variety, that when I mentioned that this book had come out, like, they were like, oh, I don't think that's for me, you know? And I was like, it's interesting because actually, like, I don't think it was even the queer element of it. Like, that was not necessarily what bothered them. It was more the romance element of it. Like the idea that they would read a book about that had like a central romance in it. And one of my cousins said this, and I was like, I just find this really fascinating because, like, this is a book like about many things, but it includes being about like food and also about music production. And like, these are actually probably guys that you would like to hang out with, you know, like, it's not even like they are.
Do you think a straight person could get through all of the queer culture references and conversations in here comfortably? Or do you think most non-queer people would be like, do people really talk like that? I'm uncomfortable.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of straight people who read it and who loved it, so I don't.
Yeah, I do too, but like, there were parts where I was like, this is so gay. This is the weirdest thing I've seen all day. Right? I was like, yeah, this is real. This is really, really real.
Yeah. No, I want to talk about that actually for a minute, just because I think that this is an important distinction to make about queer fiction in general, is that there is like there's an element of, well, let's just put it this way. So the majority of male romance is written by straight women. Okay. So just like a fact, like across the board, it's written by straight women.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. The majority of it,
what?
like in the genre.
Mostly it's a bunch of straight women writing a lot of things. Okay. I'm going to sit on that. I'm going to
white women specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
so that's
another white lady teaching English. Surprise.
I mean, so that is the truth of it. Like, within the genre, the number of queer writers who are writing male fiction, and then the number of queer male writers is actually quite small. Like, the
gatekeeping.
And the audience that they are writing for is also predominantly straight women. So, like, in terms of the people who consume, like, who buy that kind of fan fiction, it's mostly straight women.
I want to be really proud of them on one hand, and then on the other hand, like, are we being fetishized? What?
No, yeah, you don't need to be proud of them. I mean, I think it's complicated. I mean, I think people read it for all kinds of different reasons, but if you think about it in terms of the, like, I think it is different in some ways just because the power relations are different, but when you think about the appeal of lesbian, like, porn to straight men, it's like it's similar. Like it's like a something where you can be a voyeur and not necessarily a participant in something. But I think one of the best descriptions I ever heard about why women read gay fiction is because it is the only context in which you can read a romance and there's no chance of a woman being hurt.
Yeah, that's why I was like, okay, there are a couple elements that I think that I might be into them experiencing, right? Where like, yeah, like the woman in that story is not going to get trashed because she's not in there.
Right.
And then I think I wanted to be like proud of any straight person who's not squeamish about gay male sex. I feel like there's like an ew factor that people apply to gay men in a way they don't apply to lesbians necessarily. And so like there's a tiny element also of me being like,
it's true.
Okay.
But I will tell you that a lot of straight women do read like gay porn, basically, and gay romance fiction. But I will also say that there's a very big difference between, like, basically you can have gay fiction that is not written for gay people.
Oh, absolutely. Where the conversations do not actually feel queer. Where like your friends obviously stormed the castle to dress you for the date. Obviously. I was not surprised in any way when his door opened. He was surprised. And I was like, it's your friends to dress you, dummy. Like, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I very specifically, and in some ways the fact that I wrote this as fan fiction allowed me to do this, like, from the very beginning, because a lot of fan fiction is written by queer people for queer people. And I did write this book for queer people. Like, I did not care if like straight people got the references. I didn't care if they were made uncomfortable. Like, none of that.
I enjoy picturing them getting to those places and those conversations and being like, I don't think I'd be okay if my friends talked to me that way, and me being like, too bad, it's awesome. I'm enjoying the moment of discomfort that anyone straight would have in some of those truly queer conversations where I'm like, this is queer culture.
I mean, I think it really depends on your level of exposure to queer communities, because obviously, like, you could be straight and have a lot of experience in queer communities.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think that if you really don't have that kind of experience,
I'm really enjoying this discomfort for them.
I also think the thing that's interesting sometimes is that people will read these things and they'll be like, this seems like kind of cliche, like a gay cliche, or a gay shay, as I called it in one other book that I wrote. But the thing is that some cliches are true. Like, there are some things like about, like, and I don't mean this in like but like there are elements, there are scenes in this book that might seem like things that you've seen before in.
They're real pieces of culture that are not just jokes from straight people about queer culture. Like, this is actual queer culture, and we're not doing it as a joke. We know this conversation inside and out. It's our lived experience. It's not just a joke you make about queer culture.
Right. It's not there to be comic relief, but at the same time, it's like really fucking funny. Like, there are parts of their conversations in this book that I really enjoyed writing, because I could literally imagine being in the room. Like, I have been
we have been in the room
and like had them say some of these things. And honestly, like, one of the reasons I love writing about queer friend groups is that it makes me sad sometimes to think about straight people not having this, like, not like, sometimes when I'm in groups of straight people and I might not have any other queer people in the group, or there are like very few queer people in the group, I just have these moments where I'm just like, wow, it's like, it's sad that you can't have as good of a time as I have with my friends, because you like won't talk about someone's like terrible dick pics or something,
right?
Or like they're like, I'm trying to example of, like, in this book in particular, like, there are a lot of examples actually, but like You know, I mean, like they have a level of intimacy with each other, and like familiarity with each other where it's like they can like drag each other like you would not you would not believe, but
I would believe.
They don't,
I have participated.
they don't feel they like, it's like they can do that, but it's just like, it's no one gets offended, like no one's like starting a fight. Like there are like things that like they say to each other that if you had two straight men who said those things to each other, like they would just like throw down like afterwards, you know. And it's like that just doesn't happen in the same way because they're not so threatened by each other, you know. Like they're not like two men who are like going to be freaked out because one of them just told them that like their hair looks stupid, you know. Like it's like, it's just like
about queer bathroom culture, like in general. Like there is nothing like backing up to like a urinal with a bunch of queens and like hitting it and like looking in the mirror afterwards and like discussing hair and like outfits and like,
right.
They're missing out. They're missing out on like, I am an open like neighbor and friend of anybody I meet at this urinal. Like, I have a really hard time like, with that element. Like, you just went and came right back. Like, I'm capable. I can pee really fast.
Talk to anybody? Like, why didn't you talk to anybody?
Right. And then, like, I feel that, like, more so for, like, straight white dudes who, like, don't, like, in even, like, a Target bathroom, like, if there are other moms in there, like, within 30 seconds, I'm helping some other little kid wash their hands while she, you know,
right.
paper towel. You know, it's just this immediate, like, hi, neighbor. Hello, new best friend, immediately. Like,
well, I think it was really...
How does queer people not have that?
It was important to me. Part of the advantage to me of writing about a queer friend group is also that you get to have a lot of different stories of like how people discovered their own queerness and how they engage with their queerness. And they're not all the same story, or like you just don't get one single story like you get in a lot of like, you know, stuff where it'll be like, here's like the gay character and they represent all gay people and like all of the, you know, like, so like in this case, it's like you have like the experiences that each of them have had, like with like coming out, with growing up, like are vastly different from each other. And actually like this impacts their relationships with each other quite a lot. Like there's like Nick, who is like, I just always think is like he's just very conscious of being like the fumbly white dude a lot of the time. Like Elijah is not as conscious of that, like which like Elijah's not as present in this book, but like Elijah's just much more like, I'm just like gonna be like, I'm gonna say whatever I'm gonna say, and like I'm just like a space case, so like everyone is fine with it. But he does get called on it a lot more. He's also dancing, like he's also dating a trans dude, so like that's a whole other thing. But like with Nick, it's like he just...
remind me what Elijah teaches.
Elijah teaches art.
Yeah. Like that to me, like I could feel that from Elijah in this book, and I was like,
yes.
Yeah, he's gonna play the artist. Even like if all of there's a dancer and a musician.
Yeah.
There's like the visual artist who is like,
I mean, he's also a musician, but he is absolutely the like spacey like art like guy that like, and then he has this partner who is like, what is wrong with you? Like, please, like, it's just like the, you know, bringing him down to earth. So that's the third book, is Jaden and Elijah.
Have you done the zodiac signs? Do you know the birthdays for your characters?
I don't necessarily know their birthdays, but I do know their zodiac signs, I would say.
What sign is Elijah?
I actually, well, I can think of like the character that he is based on. I know that zodiac sign, but I would say that he's somewhere in like he could be an Aquarius. No, he's not an Aquarius. I was going to say Aquarius, but I didn't want to put that on him because that's not actually, people often say that for people who are artistic. I think he's more Pisces would be my guess. But
deep water.
He's very like in his feelings, but at the same time has like probably a Capricorn element in there too. So like he's
feet on the ground in any way.
What?
He has his feet on the ground in any way.
Well, he does in some aspects. He's capable. Like there are points. I mean, again, like I don't even remember because I had to cut a lot of things from like in terms of his scenes, but he had more scenes. But I know that in his scenes with Nick, he is often the one, like he and Jaden both have this in common, like where they are often the one with Nick where they're just like, dude, like, what is the reality in this situation though? Like you are making up all this stuff where you're saying like, you know, oh, he doesn't want to date me, he doesn't like me, blah blah blah. Like, but like, is that actually true? Like, both of them are very much like grounded in that way of being like, I know that you're putting all this stuff like on, you're projecting all of this stuff. And in fact, I think there's like some parts in like there's some part in it where like,
I like that you said projection, and there is a moment in the book where I have written in pencil to myself, is this transference?
there's also a line in the book, I'm pretty sure, where I used like where it says like, I think I stole it from my friend Steve, because he said something about how would you like film to go with that projection or something like that. It was like one of those kinds of like lines essentially. But like that aspect of,
so Freud is a character in here as well.
Yeah. I mean, this is the big thing for both him and both Nick and Gensio, right? Is that both of them have very inaccurate like images of themselves, like in terms of like who they are, what they're capable of, etc. Like,
when do we get more of Jaden and Elijah? Are they book 3?
Yes, they're book 3.
I am not kidding. I genuinely am begging you. Can I please have more of Yolanda? Can Yolanda be a reoccurring character? Could she be a character that you tossed in there and turns out to be like, oh shit, the audience loved her? Audience.
You're the first person to say that you would like more Yolanda. But
are you kidding? Like, when she lays it out for Junseo, I'm like,
yeah, I mean, she's great. I don't know.
I, as Junseo, needed that.
I don't know if she. It's tricky because Junseo is not going to be like the focus of any of the other ones, and I can't imagine that they would see the same therapist. Like, that seems like any of them would see the same.
What
therapist.
If she's queer and she bumps into restaurant best friend?
This is a good idea. I like this. I would definitely use this.
What if she goes to the same karaoke place?
I mean, I think she wouldn't show up at his restaurant because that would be not cool. That's the problem.
I'd be the date of Yolanda when they meet her at the karaoke bar.
But they absolutely could run into each other at some like gay club or something.
And then just like drop the same wisdom. Which is interesting. I love that you find yourself to be really similar to Junseo, which is true, and I can see lots of pieces of personality that overlap a ton. But like when I met Yolanda, I was like, Sonia, just hold me and tell me it's gonna be okay.
First of all, I hate writing therapists into books. Like, what? Having been a therapist, I do not like writing them in. Also, I would like to say that John Lasky once told me that it was really lazy to write a therapist into a book because they can just explain someone's like emotional arc in like a few
John
moments.
Lasky has said to us, Sonia, you're lazy for writing a therapist, even though you are going to be a therapist and you know dialogue really well.
I mean, he didn't know that at the time, to be fair. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know I was going to be a therapist. But at the same time, like, I think it's true sometimes it's used in this like expositionary way where it's like not really earned. Like the therapist will just show up and be like, let me tell you all of these things about your deep, like you can just tell me your deep thoughts and I'm just like this repository. But I actually think in this case, that was not what happened. For one thing, like Junseo
waited until he was so far past triggered.
Yeah, like he was not
earned a therapist moment.
Yeah, he was in a moment of crisis when he went to her. So it was like a very different thing. And I think I also just wanted to write it in because my general feeling is that like the romance, the central romance in any book should be like
the
traumatized person, like therapy, you know.
It worked out that way. I mean, I was joking about having this, you know, I wasn't joking anyway about having this as a PTSD prop, but it worked. You completely got me that as a traumatized person reading your romance, like I even have like, I don't know if you can see the difference between my nerdy office supplies, but like these two non-disposable tabs. Realistically, I reuse all of these because that's who I am. But these two that are meant to be reusable, that are paper clips, not adhesive, they're marking points at which I was like, oh damn, oh, the PTSD is hitting the fan. The PTSD is hitting in the best possible way, and like, look, I can watch them work it out. I can watch them get triggered, and I can watch them recover from their triggers.
Right.
So good job.
And that's the virtue of romance, I think, is that it's a thing that you can do in romance that I think is sometimes harder to do in other types of fiction, because when you're reading it that it's going to turn out okay, and it makes it easier, I think, sometimes to get through the harder parts, because basically that the author is going to complete that arc for you from like wherever they start to what my friend Emily always refers to as emotional justice. So like, that like they're going to achieve emotional justice at some point, which is not guaranteed in many other genres. Like and sometimes it doesn't need to be, like, I mean, there are definitely genre like books where like I will be like, okay, they just stopped this story before they got there, and so that's why this ending is like this. But I like the guarantee of that. It allows me to feel safe in certain stories where otherwise I would not feel safe in like reading about some things. Like, and I think a lot of romance deals pretty extensively with trauma, and so for me to go into a story like that, I need to feel like I'm going to come out on the other end of it, and it's going to be like, they're going to be okay, basically. And I know that may be a fiction, that is the virtue of fiction, like, in the sense that like not everyone does come out okay, like on the end of these things.
But it's also like a really nice, optimistic touch that like you can take a romance book about musicians and kindergartner teachers and use it to convince me that humans are not a dumpster fire. Like that fits really, really well. Hey,
yeah. I think
my fellow humans, we're not constantly a dumpster fire.
I think the idea of it is that even if there are humans that are dumpster fires, i.e. like, Nick's father, like, or Junseo's husband, or any of these people who are, who are predators basically, and who are
right. There's so many predators in the world.
That even with all of those people in the world, that we are still able to survive those things, like that we're able to survive and
not absent-mindedly self-medicating. Propranolol, my PTSD PRN, makes me really foggy, and I didn't want to go that route, so I chose very specifically the sedative instead of my prescribed because I don't want to be that foggy. So I just want to reassure you, not like constantly wasted out of trauma.
No,
this was just my like breathe through adrenaline for the
whatever it takes, as Yolanda would say, whatever it takes.
Oh my God. So what I'm hearing is that I can be Yolanda's date when they meet her at a karaoke bar. Oh my God, what if she came into Junseo's restaurant? Wait, does she know which restaurant he is?
I just said before that she cannot go to Junseo's restaurant, because that would be like not cool as a therapist to show up. She obviously knows where he works.
She knows what the name of his restaurant is.
Yes. I mean, he's not just, I mean, first of all, I'm sure he's...
Okay, karaoke. What I'm hearing then instead is that I can be her date for karaoke.
I really am going to write her in later. I agree with you that it would be cool. It would be one of those like great, I mean, having been on both ends of this in various forms, because like as a queer person, if you have a queer therapist, it's like almost inevitable that you're going to run into them at some point or another, just like because... that you have that awkward moment where you're like, oh, I don't know, should I introduce people to this person? Like, do I want them to talk to my therapist? And then like my policy as a therapist has always been that I don't say anything to anybody until they say something to me. So like, I'm not going to like come up to you in a bar.
That's a real policy. Like that's how it works for lots of things that are even remotely HIPAA or FERPA related, right? So anything that legally protects someone's privacy, as badly as I want to hug and pinch the faces of every client or student I've ever had, I
Exactly.
do resist that impulse and wait for them to decide how they want to approach things.
Very valid.
Especially when I'm wearing a Mr. Rogers sweater, then I feel very appropriate. And
well, I have to go soon because I am actually going to pick up Korean food. This is a true story. I'm going to South Philly to pick up a Korean food from a Korean pop-up that is this afternoon. So
nice. What are you gonna get? Do you know? Do you know what they have? What they're offering?
I've already ordered it, so I'm just gonna pick it up. Like it's literally like a socially distanced, like just pick up thing. But yes, I am getting a Korean fried chicken sandwich, which I'm pretty excited about. And
so it is going to be a recipe for seduction.
It is. It's going to absolutely. And then I'm going to go give some food to my friends in South Philly, and we're going to talk about romance. So we're going to talk about the romances.
Romance day.
Because my friend who I'm going to hang out with is also a very big romance reader. I mean, she reads way more than I do. Like, she reads like 30 books a month kind of thing.
Well, you have successfully converted me to romance. So good job.
But I would like to put in a small plug here, just because we were talking about 50 Shades of Grey earlier, and I just like want to take that like general taste out of my mouth. That if you want,
but it's not trash. We've already discussed. We can't dismiss it as trash.
If you want to read a book or a series, I would say a series of books that deals very extensively with both kink and its relationship to trauma. The books that by Alexis Hall, who is like one of my favorite queer romance writers. The books that he wrote that start with How to Bang a Billionaire. That's the first book. It's literally called How to Bang a Billionaire. He wrote it as like an intentional kind of spoof on 50 Shades of Grey, but the queer version. But it is actually a very serious examination of like what a relationship like that looks like and its power dynamics. So
I am very into that, I say, realizing halfway through the phrase what my phrasing is, but I love when something goes from like to like it's becoming real.
Yeah, and those books are really, I mean, they are very, I listened to all three. There are three of them in the series, and I listened to all three of them at a particular time when I was struggling a lot, especially with migraines, and I listened to them as audiobooks. And I tell you, it's always an experience to listen to a romance novel as an audiobook because, like they get spicy. And so you probably want to make sure that you're not anywhere where people can hear you. But
they can hear you, not just like see you blushing and like see the cover, but like where they can hear you.
Well, I meant hear like the audiobook. Like you might not want them to know like what you're reading is what I'm saying. I mean this in particular with Alexis Hall because Alexis Hall is like very explicit in like
you were thinking of the author's voice, not your voice in response to the author's voice.
Right. Like I was thinking you're listening to an audiobook.
Michelle Obama and Becoming. Like I don't want anybody to hear my voice in response to the amazing things that Michelle Obama.
Well, I was thinking more like because it's being read aloud, you may not like want because you don't always want to share like what you're reading with.
I don't want to share Michelle Obama.
I agree with that. I feel like that when I'm listening to Barack Obama's book too.
Oh, absolutely. And like in that scenario, which is real and on my phone right now, just paused, where now I'm just thinking about the Obamas.
Everything comes back to the Obamas. Like my point is, Alexis Hall
should not be able to hear me and my response to the Obamas.
Well, Alexis Hall is really great.
Scenario that you have described to me. I wish no one could hear me.
Alexis Hall is fantastic, and Alexis Hall is a really good example of someone who started out publishing in like with essentially small queer presses, and then eventually got major publishing and distribution deals, and that's what they have. In fact, I know this. I'm a little bit nervous about this, although actually I'm sure this book will be completely different than mine. It doesn't matter anyway. But their next book is about a chef competition show of some kind. So it's like I don't know if it's baking. It might be baking, but I'm not actually sure about that. But I know that it's about like some kind of food competition show.
Food and romance. So many tropes.
But Alexis Hall writes, like, they wrote a really fun lesbian vampire like detective series, essentially, that is also really good.
You know, I made it through a lot of this without getting sidetracked, but I have a pencil now in my hand.
Yeah. Just Google Alexis Hall. Like, I have not read all of Alexis Hall's books, but I would pretty much unequivically recommend like all of them.
I have so many questions. Okay, you're right. I'm just gonna go make myself an extensive reading list that I will never accomplish the list that I'm adding to.
But I do have to go. So
I have two questions.
Yes.
One, while we're on the food thing, can one of our next chats be you teaching me how to make kimchi fried rice, in which you have sent me a list of ingredients to gather for myself before you teach me how to make kimchi fried rice, just like in the book?
Well, I did make a video of that for Instagram where I've actually made kimchi fried rice and explained the recipe. Can
Yolanda make a video?
If you want me to personally take you through it, I guess I can do that. But
it does exist. Or Michelle Obama, but I guess
it does exist. There is a video on my Instagram. It's about 10 minutes long, in which I explain and demonstrate how to make kimchi fried rice.
It's going to take me a lot longer than 10 minutes to figure that out.
It's really not hard. It's very easy.
If this was baking, I would maybe believe that.
Well, it's very easy because kimchi fried rice is like how you what you do with like your leftovers.
Yeah. So it's like every other fried rice I make, and I just make sure that there's lots of kimchi in it.
Kimchi in it.
Well done. Thank you for the tutorial. We have now completed that tutorial as well. And are you writing a K-drama? Is this a K-drama? Are you taking lessons from K-drama for this series?
For this series, I would say generally no, because I think that K-dramas have a different, well, that's a complicated question because K-dramas are like huge. There's a huge variety in K-dramas, and there's a lot of different, not only are there different genres in terms of like, you know, every kind of thing you can imagine in American TV, there is a version of that in Korean or other, you know, Japanese, Chinese, all of those different countries, you know, produce their own dramas. But if I were to say whether I based any of this book on a K-drama, though, like in terms of premise, I do think there were a couple that influenced me. Like there's one that sorry. Every time I talk about this K-drama, it's like I have to figure out, this is a good lesson for me as a librarian, because part of what you're supposed to do is to be able to like sell, you know, particular books or, you know, entertain.
You're going to be the most prepared elevator pitch giver.
But so there's a really great K-drama that is available. I think it is available on Netflix again, because it was available, then they took it off, and I think it's now back on there. But it is called Oh My Ghost. And it is on, there's multiple versions of it, as is often true with like K-dramas, and because they are often made by multiple times in different countries. But the Korean version of it is very good, and it is about a Korean chef who is running his own restaurant, and he has one of his employees is really in love with him, and she's this very shy girl, and doesn't know, kind of, you know, isn't going to do anything about it because she's so shy. And then she happens to have, so the one sort of quirky thing, I guess you could say, about her is that she sees ghosts, and she happens to see this one ghost who is a ghost of a girl about her age who died. We don't know how she died, actually. Like, you know, at the beginning of it, we have no idea. But we know that she can't pass on to the next world because she has something unresolved, like in this lifetime. And she's convinced that the reason that what she has that's unresolved is that she's a virgin, that she died a virgin. So I mean, I won't say whether that's actually the
Watching
actual.
this one, what are the chances that you told me about it and I started watching it and am now delighted to hear about it a second time? What are the chances of that?
So the thing that you might be able to begin to guess where this actually goes, but
Oh, yeah.
essentially she takes over the body of the girl in the restaurant because she decides that she needs to lose her virginity and that a good candidate for that is this chef. But I will say that like it does not go the directions you expect it to go. But and the thing that's also interesting about it is that although the chef is Korean in it, he does not make Korean food. So his restaurant is not a Korean restaurant. It's like, I think it's an Italian restaurant actually. But it's a very, very well done romance. And it does not have like, first when I like started watching it, I was like, oh no, this is going to have terrible issues with consent because you have like this.
That was my next thought. Like after I frowned, when you're like, it doesn't go where you think it goes, I was like, I'm disappointed. And then I was like, wait, maybe it's less rapey.
Yeah, no, it's not rapey at all. For one thing, like a thing to keep in mind about Korean dramas is that they almost never have sex in them, like at all. They are very, very heavily censored. So like they will usually only have like a few kisses maybe, or like they'll be like fade to black kind of like sex in it. But a lot of the time they literally like the characters just never even get to that point. It's just all about them falling for each other. So there's really a lot
of model for tension and holding tension and like, but maybe not for the complete model of romance in general. Though you like to hold tension like they do.
I mean, I think that I do get frustrated like with them sometimes because I think they are sometimes like the pacing is ridiculous. But I also think that there's also an aspect of them, of some of them, where because it's kind of similar to like what people had to do within the Hays Code, like when that was imposed, like in order to like convey certain things, they have to be more creative in the way that they do it, because they can't, just have explicit sex scenes or whatever. I mean, I do think that there are American dramas where, like American Everything, basically, where they use sex as a crutch. Like it's like a thing where they just kind of like throw it in there because it will make people, like people will watch it, but it doesn't necessarily serve a lot of purpose. And in these dramas, they have to work a lot harder for that, and they also have to really earn that, and they also have to spend a lot of time showing how people form intimacy with each other.
But you're going to give us both, like in your series, right? Like you're going to give us that amazing example of holding tension, and you're going to give us more sex scenes, right?
Hopefully.
Are you still comfortable writing sex scenes? Can you improv one for us right now?
No, I cannot improv one. That is not something I can do. But yes, I am comfortable writing sex scenes. I don't have any problem writing them. When
you read them, have you had to have a circumstance, especially like in an interview about your romance book, where somebody was like, "I really like this scene. Could you read it to me?"
No one has ever asked me to read the sex scene aloud. Although I will say that actually,
do you want me to tell you what page it's on and you can read it?
I will not read those aloud. Although I can read them aloud. I'm not going to let you record me reading them aloud. But I do have. So
there's a lot to
say about that.
Like you're okay writing them on a recorded record of your ideas and exact thoughts for a sex scene.
Right.
But reading them on a video is a different experience.
Because I don't necessarily want that to be like
something I don't edit out.
Yeah, I just don't want to read it. I just don't want to do that. That's not something that I feel like I want to do. I mean, I've always said that I would do my own audiobooks if people gave me the opportunity to, and I would do that for this. Like I would definitely read the audiobook, but I just don't necessarily want it to be like something that's like a clip that could be easily taken out of context.
You don't want me to just have a bit. You don't want me to just have a little bit. Like,
yeah.
You're not going to support my comedy for this bit. But could you please give us an audiobook or video of you sitting somewhere looking like Oscar Wilde, like elaborate ruffles of things.
I will say that a very funny story about this and about like just about straight people in general is that when I was in our MFA program and I workshopped a queer story in our MFA program. I workshopped it was a part of a queer mystery novel that I still have not finished.
Yeah,
but one day.
I mean, not the section, but I remember the story.
Yeah, and there's a particular part of that novel. It's actually the way the novel starts, where it's about two boys who fall in love in boarding school, and there was a section in it. It doesn't have any like sex on the page like in the story really, but there's a section in it in which they are like naked in bed together. And when I workshopped it, John Lasky made me read that part aloud as the section that I had to read aloud. And I was like, okay, John, like whatever, like, you know. And then afterwards, like he was like, oh, that I just wanted to read that because I thought it was like very brave that like you wrote this and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this is hilarious to me because you have no idea what I've written that is like so much more explicit than like this very like gentle scene of like two boys who happen to be in bed together. Like
are so easy scandalized. They're so easily scandalized.
Yeah. And I was just like, it's just amazing to me that you've never read, or maybe you have, but just like have so little experience with queer fiction that this would be like your bar for like what is like explicit in some form. Like I was just like, man, you have not seen explicit. Like
I just started hooking up with a queer cis dude as that program began, and basically every MFA professor there was like, you need to write about that. And I was like, so average. We have to go. You have to go pick up your Korean food. But once upon a time, John Lasky, like at around like a Costco devoured with individual forks, not put onto a plate, sheet cake. He had a shot of tequila and everybody had a shot of tequila. I think maybe my dad bought everybody that shot of tequila. John Lasky raised his shot of tequila and he goes, to the best group of writers in a 2-block radius. Like 2 blocks. That's it. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, I know I'm making fun of John, but I would not be half the writer that I am today.
Oh, yeah.
He's absolutely the most influential writing teacher that I've ever had. I mean, I would say like I have definitely had, I have books I've read, like I have authors that I've read that are enormously influential to me. But in terms of someone who like personally helped me with writing, and keeping in mind that like I actually don't have that many, that I did not take that many creative writing classes, but in terms of like the, you know, with like his help with my first novel and the story structure element of that, everything about that, and the fact that he was very good about reining in my more like ridiculous impulses. Like I will never forget how he made me cut part of a description of like the lead in my YA novel because he was just like, this is just too much. Like you cannot, like he cannot be this handsome. Like you cannot have like this many adjectives. Like that's gross. Like you need to stop. You need to cut some of that out. And he was right.
He also did that to me multiple times. To the best writing professor.
Yeah.
In a 2-block radius.
2-block radius. Yeah, he was great. He was awesome.
Fantastic. So are you. You are the best, and you routinely play that role for me. You told me where Ophelia starts. You were like, so this paragraph 3 pages in, like, so like this is where the story starts. And I was like,
well, one day maybe someone will actually let me teach creative writing, but that has not happened yet. So
it's so much more gentle than you're imagining, though. Like introduction to creative writing, I'm so gentle. I'm so gentle. Does that sound like me?
Oh, I mean, so am I. It's just that,
I am not
like
looking at this being like, this is garbage
able
coming.
to get a job. I've just never been able. I can only get a job doing what you're doing right now, which is interviewing people about their greatest accomplishments. But I cannot get a job teaching
like
writing.
this guy. Teaching creative writing.
Yes, I can also get it. I could also employ myself making BTS placemats for Etsy, which is my backup plan as a career. Is definitely making placemats.
Okay. All right. I adore you. I love you. Go get your Korean food. And I hope you have any introvert battery left for socializing so that you can talk about romance. If you don't, you can blame it on me and you can just say, Beth ruined me. So I'm sorry. It's Beth's fault.
Yeah.
I will take that hit. I am happy to get thrown under that bus for you. But with what little energy you have left, I would like a full review of your Korean food.
Yes, I will do that. I will probably post on Instagram about it. So
perfect. Okay, I love you. Have a good night.
bye.
I don't know how to end the meeting that quickly. It's not over.
Rolling on like a rolling stone. Sing song when I'm walking home. Jump up to the top of the brown. Ding dong, call me on my phone. Nice tea and I'll get my ping pong.